Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So now we have opened a photo up inside Photoshop. Now we opened up JPEG. Photoshop can open and save in quite a few file types. And the native file type for Photoshop is the Photoshop document or .psd. And a PSD will save everything. It won't compress anything and it won't remove anything. If you have multiple layers, which we'll talk about tonight, it'll retain those. A JPEG, not so much. The benefits of a JPEG are that it's small, it's fast, but it's not full detailed. It is compressed. Do you guys know of any other image file types? You might want to name a couple more for me.
PNG.
There you go.
AI.
Yes.
TIFF.
Yes. PDF counts too.
PDF.
So Photoshop can handle all those too. It can even handle AI. You can't really do the Illustrator stuff in there, but you can access it and play with it and stuff. You can do some vector stuff in Photoshop, but they have like designed it not to be good at it, so that you have to buy Illustrator. But it can do vector stuff, but it's mostly raster. What do I mean by raster? Raster just means pixel-based. See that? This is not really a ginkgo leaf. This is just a bunch of little yellow squares that kind of look like a ginkgo leaf when you're far away. Believe it or not. I guess in the same sense that we're all just a bunch of cells. But really, that is how a computer sees stuff. And have you ever seen digital artifacts before? Anyone familiar with that? Not like the Indiana Jones kind of artifact, but let me show you. There's an interesting phenomenon that occurs because of the way a computer sees a picture. This kind of thing. Like, what is this crap? Like, yellow dot? Like, what? Were the aliens in there? No, this is what happens to a picture when it gets compressed because of how a computer sees it and interprets it and does all the math. Because it goes from top left to bottom right. Like in that movie Chappie when he painted a painting. So, because of that, you get all this weird kind of stuff when it tries to reduce it down in size. So if you've ever been searching online before and looking for a picture of something and then you see some and you try to like stretch them bigger and you're like, oh, this looks like Super Mario, like the original, like this won't do. That's because you can't ever really make a low definition photo bigger without problems big time because detail only goes one direction. You can reduce, but you can't ever go back up. Well, not without basically recreating everything. It's kind of the same thing as like on like the CSI programs are pretty bad about it when they're like they're like looking at somebody's name tag on the I'm back to the surveillance cam thing, and they're like enhance.
Yeah,
It was the butler, you know. You can't do that. You can't do that. That would be like a super camera. Well, you know, I say that the satellites do have cameras kind of like that, but not at a speedway or something. So images being based on that the pixel dynamic, that's what we're going to be talking about here with these first tools that we're going to talk about. So any questions so far on my lecture? All right, we're going to move on. I take silence as a yes, we're with you, ready to move on. So if you're not, definitely say so because I can't see your screens and I won't know. Okay, so toolbar here on the left, we're going to learn each and every one of these tools tonight. No, we're not. But we're going to learn a few of them. There's a lot of them, and some of them have subtools. Adobe's got kind of a weird way of arranging these. If you see the little triangle in the bottom right corner there are subtools. So if you right-click, for example, there's a couple of lassos we're going to take a look at. So you can either right-click or you can hold the left mouse button down on them and it'll pop out the subtool menu. I honestly hate this interface, but they didn't ask me when they designed it. So I guess it helps save space on the toolbar, but mine here is a little abbreviated. So, okay, so you've got the color picker here. Mine's kind of funky because I have to change my resolution for the projector. So,
Is it the box with 4 triangles in it? You said click on the little triangle.
any of these tools. So if you look at my screen here,
Okay.
you see all these tools here, one on top of the other.
Right.
See in the bottom corner, some of them have a triangle.
Uh-huh.
So you don't actually have to click on the triangle, but that's just an indicator that there's more tools down there. Right-clicking is the easiest way, and then you would click on the tool that you want. Say I want it. And then you don't have to go back and change it anymore unless you want a different kind of lasso. So you're on that lasso. So first of all, let's actually look at the lasso. Why not? Let's start with the lasso. Now, there are different ones. I want you guys to be on the traditional lasso. This is a tool that cowboys like to use. So we're going to start with that lasso. Anyone ever used this before?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you like it?
I actually did.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was doing, but it was something really specific, and I was trying to be really, really nitpicky about it.
Was it the magnetic lasso or the lasso?
Oh, I don't know.
We'll find out. We're going to find out. Okay. So the lasso is basically...
What if you don't have a lasso?
Oh, you've got to have a lasso.
Left click on
It's
the
third
lasso.
one down from the top.
The third one down from the top is a paintbrush in a circle.
I think this is the magnetic lasso.
I don't think so. That'd be 4.
Sitting here used, and if you click there.
Another unexpected thing. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. So, lasso tool. You will just kind of freehand with this tool. You hold the button down, you move the mouse. That's all there is to it. It's kind of like doing surgery, except nobody gets hurt. And nobody gets paid either, or has to pay. So ideally, what you want to try to do is go around the lasso, around the ginkgo leaf.
How do you, never mind.
Start over.
Yeah, just click out.
That's one way. If you get way messed up, yeah, clicking outside works, or Command D is deselect. So up under here under select, there's a whole menu up here for selections. You've got select all, which is handy, deselect, and then reselect and inverse you don't use quite as often. But select all is just Command A. That's an easy way to make sure you'll get it. Command D is the opposite. It's like clean slate. It'll be more useful with the magnetic lasso. This one, you really got to freehand it. It's not super accurate. What it is good for is if I just wanted to roughly get the ginkgo and copy it, and yes, I will show you how to do this in a minute. If I wanted to do that and just roughly get it, but I wasn't really concerned about all that extra stuff on there, like I can worry about trimming that off later, it works pretty good. But there's a better one, which I'm going to show you, which might be the one you like better, I would think. And that's the magnetic lasso. So this is going to be your first. This will be your first experience with Photoshop Magic. So if you switch down to the magnetic lasso, so just right click on there, then left click on magnetic lasso, and as long as that's over here, you're good. That one's a little different. You don't want to hold the button down on that one. What you do want to do is have a very steady hand, because if this was the surgery one, oh man. Lawyers would love it. So first you want to pick a starting point and you want to click and let go. And then you want to start, you don't have to hold the button down, but just move your mouse right along the edge of whatever you're trying to grab. What the computer's looking for, what it's seeing is differences in value. All right. If you want to force one, you can click and then let go again. And We will learn zoom in a minute, which will make all of this easier, but we'll go ahead and just start it for right now. What it's looking for is the edge, basically. It's not seeing color. That isn't going to help you here. It's looking at everything in grayscale, and it's looking for the contrast and the edge. Differences between light and dark. And in places where they're close is where it will get hard and difficult to discern. And the goal is to get back to your starting place, your starting point, and then you give it a last click. But I know that that's much easier said by me than done for the first time. So if you want to do a couple other rounds, we can. But how'd you guys do? And what you're seeing here, that's called the marching ants. I've also heard them called the zebra stripes, but marching ants, that just means that's what you've selected. So everything inside there, we've alienated from the rest. Well, actually the opposite. We've highlighted it from the rest. So it's what we're affecting, and we're not affecting anything else. Let me give you an example. If I hit delete, I didn't delete the whole thing. I deleted what was inside the marching ants. And furthermore, it's basically a segregator. Furthermore, if I go in, I mean, it actually goes pixel by pixel, like a fence. And I'll show you how to zoom in just a second. But see that now? Whoa! Look how it didn't get these. They were, squint your eyes. You can kind of see it. It did a pretty good job of getting the differences. That one might go in that camp, but... And that's the fun thing when you get into... Well, you study art too, but when you study photography, and when you start studying Photoshop and photoshopping, edges are huge, guys. Edges, edges, edges. We don't think about them a lot just in every day, but we're constantly interpreting edges and what they mean. And a hard edge and a soft edge, totally different things, and they look totally, they just appear differently to us, especially when we look at them up close. So this looks like a pretty hard edge back there, but as you can see, it's not. In vector programs, you've got an infinitely hard edge, so you don't ever have to worry about that. But anytime you're cutting things like this, there's going to be some compromises. Like we didn't get a little bit up here. That's fine. I'm cool with it. This isn't going to be the best selection tool that we're going to show you tonight, though. That's coming up here in a minute. Question?
Did you say there was a way to fix when you've gotten off track and to remove
No.
some of the points?
Nope. There's no way.
Okay.
You've got no you have no safety rope, and that's what I hate about the tool most. So I could be doing like blue ribbon over here, and then oh no, yeah, there's
Yeah, your cat.
you got to start all over, back to the old drawing board. So that's one thing I don't like about it. Now, one thing you can do if you're like really close to the end, this is sort of helpful. If you're really close to the end, I'm going kind of fast. But then, like, for some reason you can't quite seem to get it right on the end, you can double-click, and it'll just make a short line from, the last one it had to the first one. But, I mean, if you're across the page, that doesn't really help. So, yeah, Command-D or Escape will get you out. Actually, if you're halfway through and you're almost destroyed there, Command-D won't work, and hitting Escape is how you'll reset. So there's that tool. And in a second, we're going to talk about, well, what do you want to do with something once you've got it separated? And that's the whole thing, is that by separating them out, you can start to cut them up. So these tools are mostly like, they'll be like scissors and glue, digital versions of scissors and glue. Right now, we're still like cutting it with a razor blade or like, almost using like a straight edge or something, like a compass. Okay, so moving on from there. Not letting you right click to deselect.
I accidentally clicked somewhere else on the picture and it's all it's selecting it all. I can't get it to.
Can you hit escape?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes if it's so if it looked like it just did like this with all the squares,
Yeah.
it hasn't actually made a selection yet. It's kind of in a limbo. So it's it's neither warm nor hot for a minute there. But yeah, escape will get you out. And, before we go too much further, let me go ahead and tell you about zoom, because I've been doing it a bunch, and I don't want it to seem like I'm the only one that gets to have any fun. So zooming is hugely helpful. Now, you don't need to go like crazy close like I just did there, but it would help to do the things we're doing now, you know, if we're a little closer. So what I'm doing right here is the hotkey way of zooming. This is my preferred way, but if you really want to do Photoshop and get fast at it, you want to use both hands. Hotkeys are awesome if you've never used them. So Command plus and Command minus, that's not very hard to remember. I mean, it's not the hardest thing. Plus and minus, in and out, right? Forward and backwards. So you got to hold Command. What I do, hold your Command with your thumb, and then hit minus or plus with these two fingers. Pretty cool, right? Now there is a zoom tool, which is a magnifying glass down here. That works fine too. What I like about the hotkey is you can stay on whatever tool you're on, and you don't have to switch to the zoom tool and back, right? But the zoom tool does another thing called scrubby zoom. So if you click the zoom tool, it's the magnifying glass at the very bottom of your toolbar. It's the most bottomest of all the tools. And with that one, you can hold the button down and scroll your mouse left to right. I wouldn't do up and down, it's left to right, I believe. And that will give you kind of like instead of increments, it'll give you a slide type zoom, a gradual, you know. And a couple other ones, Command 0 is a good one because it's fit on screen. So if you know, sometimes you'll get real lost. Like, where do you guys think I am on the, you know, like who knows? That gets me home. I was like way up in here somewhere. It's easy to get lost.
So that brings you back to where you were?
No, it brings you to fit on screen.
Oh, fit on screen.
So depending on what you're looking at, it's going to bring it to where you're seeing the whole document. Nothing's off the edge. Like, see, if I'm in like this, some of it's off the edge, obviously, but Command 0 brings it all into view again. And then the other thing I was going to talk about is when you are zoomed in, you're not looking at the whole thing, right? So how do you look at the whole thing? Well, that's where the hand tool comes into play. Now, the hand tool is down here, right above the zoom tool, but I want to show you a better way. Let me save you time and effort. Hold the space bar down and it turns into the hand tool. And then all you gotta do is click and drag with your mouse, and it's just like, think of it like your finger on an iPad or phone, right? Just like doing so you should be able to scoot up, down, left, and right. Everybody good on that?
While holding the space bar down?
Yes, you'll have to hold the space bar down to make whatever tool you're currently on turn into the hand tool.
You mean like once you're already zoomed in, right?
You have to be zoomed in order to do it, yes. The only way you can not do that is if you're in super full screen mode. Like, let me show you. You guys don't need to do this, but if I hit F a couple times, I actually can do it now. But it's rare that you would want to do that, like have it that far over. So to cycle through screen modes if you want, you guys can hit F. So there's 3, that's normal. Hit F once, that's full screen. Hit F once again, that's full screen with no menu. So in that case, I can't go all the way out. That's as far out as I can. I still have to have like a little bit of it in there. And then if you hit F again, you're back to normal.
Is that spacebar F or just F?
Is it spacebar F? No, just F, sorry.
Just F, okay.
Yeah, just F for, I don't even know,
Right.
view mode or something. Yeah, it's screen mode, I want to say. Yep.
Oh, all right. Neat.
Let's see. All right, so let's go back to doing some selections. So first of all, let's zoom in again on this center leaf, and we're going to make a copy of that leaf because two leaves are.
After we have the marching things on it.
Oh well, don't worry about your marching things because we're going to do a whole new set with a whole new tool.
Mine have disappeared in all this.
We're going to get some new ants.
Okay.
Papa's got some brand new ants. All right, so if you do have marching ants, go ahead and do a Command D for me to deselect. Oh, guys, that's another big one. We haven't experienced this yet today, but I'm going to tell you right now, If you get stuck in Photoshop and you're trying to do something, go ahead and take notes if you want. This is like the most valuable thing I'll say all night. If you're stuck in Photoshop and you don't know, you're trying to make a mark, you're trying to erase something, and it won't do it, two things you want to check first, and almost all the time it's one of those two. What layer are you on? You're on the right layer? You might not be on the right layer. And the other one is you may have a little thing like this up in the corner, like that. You see that little one up there? But you're like way down here. And you keep trying to do, see? You know, it just gave me that warning. Like you got this little one there that you can't see. So also hit Command D just to clear any selection you might have. So make sure you're on the layer you think you're supposed to be on, or you want to be on. And then also make sure you don't have like a small little selection up in the corner that it thinks you want to only work in when you want to do the opposite, basically. Like you don't even care about that little thing.
That's like make sure you haven't put the little ants around something
that you don't know about, yeah. Right, because when they're a tiny little one, believe me, it happens. Like you end up with some little selection somewhere that you didn't intend, and it can. I mean, I used to like spend, well, definitely minutes and minutes and minutes of time trying to figure out what's going on, restart the program and all that. Yeah, those are the two biggest things that'll trip you up.
When you say layer, what is that?
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay.
Layers are like selections, except with selections we've been doing, those are up, down, left, and right. But layers are 3D. Layers are front to back. Actually, we're going to see a layer in just a minute when we make a copy of this leaf. All right, so we've looked at the lassos. The tool above the lasso is the marquee. We don't really need to do much with this tool, but I do want to show you that it's there. And instead of drawing it, you kind of plot it, so to speak, just corner to corner. I mean, it's the most basic selection tool, but it does nothing for us to get this leaf. The only way to kind of pitifully like try to do that would be like this, and you don't want to do this, guys. You don't want to. This is going to be a Minecraft leaf anyway, right? So you don't want that, but it is there. Again, it can be good for like getting a broad selection, right? Like if I wanted it to be in a nice rectangular frame, yeah, I'd use that. But we actually want to get the leaf around the shape of the leaf, okay? So I'm going to show you a way better tool for doing that. There's actually two here. Let's look at the wand first, because the wand was the oldest one. Anyone in here used the magic wand before? It's an old one. It's an old one. So magic wand is, again, we're going just one tool below the lassos. And there's two tools that live below the lasso, and we're gonna learn those now. So 4 down from the top.
And then click on the magic wand.
Correct. Yeah. And so this tool is a bit simpler, not quite as useful as the one I'm going to show you in just a second, but it is pretty cool. So just go ahead and click somewhere. Click somewhere inside the leaf and see what you get. What you get is going to depend on the tolerance, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this tool, the way it works is it hits 1 pixel, and then based on the pixel that you clicked, it's going to look at all the pixels around that pixel, and it's going to ask itself, hey, are these similar? Are these not? Is this the same as what the human was trying to tell me that, you know, and so on and so forth until it reaches a point where it's like, nah, you're not the same. Okay, now how much or how little it's going to select is based on the tolerance. But you start by hitting the pixel in the area that roughly represents the general color. Again, it's not really looking at color as much as it is at like in a grayscale, but you know, whatever is close to the area you want to grab. So, you know, if you wanted to grab that little reflection there of moisture, you know, see, I did a pretty good job of grabbing it. Leaf is a little trickier because there's more, it's less homogeneous. You know, there's more going on in there, but the tolerance can let you adjust that. So my laser pointer here in the middle This bar right here, we haven't really gotten into the application windows over here, but that's what all this stuff on the right side is. Toolbar on the left, main stage, of course, right in the center. Along the top, there are often a lot of choices and settings for whatever tool that you're using. So this is kind of an important area that we'll talk about tonight. Tolerance. So the higher that number, the more it'll grab, and vice versa. So in my case, I've kind of hit just in the center there, not on one of the droplets. I mean, it's roughly getting it, but not quite getting enough. So I want to turn my tolerance up. You can type the number in, or you can actually click right on the word tolerance, hold the button down, and drag it to the right. So I'm going to take it up to about 50-ish. Looking better. I'm actually really close.
It got my whole thing with 32 on there.
Well, there you go. You're good to go then.
My whole leaf, brother, not thing with leaf.
You got a hole in one. The equivalent of... Oh, no, sometimes it will, but look, see, now I kept creeping mine up because it wasn't getting a couple little areas.
Go and get the others.
And it did. It went a little too far. So, yeah, it's a give and take. You don't always get the whole thing. That's kind of why this tool isn't as good as the one I'm going to show you in just a second. But the wand came first. But you got to use your human ingenuity and strategy, because the computer doesn't know. This is just you totally putting Photoshop in the driver's seat here. But it can be helpful. It can get you close. Now the next tool is the one that shares a spot with the wand, and you guys will probably use this tool a lot. I know I do. I'm going to hit Command D just to reset. And the one we're going to use is the Quick Selection Tool or brush. Now, it is the first brush tool that I'm going to talk about with you guys tonight. Command D will just kind of reset us here. And then we want to use the tool that was sharing a spot with the wand, the Quick Selection Tool. Now, it's a brush tool, so I'm going to have to teach you a couple things about the brush real quick, okay? So, any of the brush tools have a size to them, okay? And the size, you can change the size. Like I'm increasing here, I'm decreasing here. Everyone should see a circle of some size. And even if you just have a little cross like that, you just have a really little circle. So to increase it or decrease it, you want to click the brackets. The brackets being the two buttons to the direct right of the P button. P as in Papa. Okay. Sometimes you do those little sideway, funny, smiley faces with those buttons.
Oh, okay.
Sort of like that Kermit the Frog expression, like, I guess.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get it too big. You don't want to be bigger than the leaf. You don't want to be too small. To give you a rough idea, I'd say sort of about the size I've got here.
So what are we doing? We're clicking the brackets in.
Just to get a decent size for your brush. So somewhere in this range. You know, maybe like you could fit 5 or 6 of them inside the leaf. All right. This is a very smart tool. Whatever you want to select, I recommend starting in the middle. So I'm going to, it might get it with one click. Let's see. It almost did. But I didn't get the stem. So to get the stem, I'm going to have to reduce it down. And then I'm just going to very slowly just kind of creep it out. You always want to work from the inside out. It's really the only way you can work. Okay, I got it. I'm going to hit Command D again. Let's pretend I wanted to do the opposite and I wanted to get the outside. Now, in that case, it's not going to get it with one click. So I would actually have to kind of curve it around. See how I'm just kind of going around. And I want to get everything but that leaf. Close. Command D. So try to get you the leaf as best you can. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and I'll show you a couple things. If you do end up getting too much, I'm going to zoom in here. If you do end up getting too much, with your other hand, you can click the Option key, and then that will take away. So you can kind of go back over the stuff that was it was a bridge too far.
Where's the option?
Options are just to the left and right of the space bar next to the command key.
Okay.
It's the Alt key, basically. Or, well, Steve Jobs would say that the Alt key is the Option key, but you know what I mean.
So at the end of where your
Posthumously.
your first selection was, where it didn't get your whole stem, you reduce down to as small as you can, and then
Well, if you want to keep grabbing more, just click. If you want to remove, like, see if I had this bit off here. See how I got that? That's when I would hit the Option. You'll see a minus in the center of your circle instead of a plus, so it's taking away. It giveth and it taketh away also. How'd everybody do? Everybody got a leaf? Because we're going to copy that leaf, and we're going to paste that leaf, which is duplicating it, and then we're going to have 2 layers, and then we're going to be talking about layers and stuff, among other things. So all our goal is right now is to try to get the marching ants over one of the, or both of the leaves. Well, no, sorry, just one of the leaves, not both. Did you get it?
it's going way wide outside my stem.
So if you zoom in on the leaf, it's a whole lot easier to be more precise on what you're doing.
Yeah, I would definitely. I agree.
Zoom in from here
Yeah.
and go as little as it'll go.
No, make the picture look thinner.
I don't think you'd have to go too small.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, so command. Let me see if I can remember now. Command plus brings it.
That's perfect. No. Oh, we're perfect.
Okay.
There you go. Perfect. You got the whole thing in frame.
This like this.
Mm-hmm. So that's a bit big, but it's okay. It works. So go down a little bit. You don't ever want it to be like bursting the bubble of whatever you're doing. But yeah, you got the right idea. Just what are you doing over there? Come back.
There it is.
Okay, and maybe a little bit smaller. A little bit more. Make sure it can fit inside the track. Perfect.
Okay.
That's good. And then just like very slow. Yep, you got it. Just keep inching it down. Stay in the center. Stay in the middle. Don't get perfect. You're done. You're done for the most part. Yeah, you got it. It takes a little practice. You kind of
Well, when you've got shaky hands, it don't work either.
you just got to remember it's not you doing it. It's you learning to tell the computer to do it. If that makes sense. That's where the challenge is. It's like, hey, can we try to get the same thing here, computer? So we're going to duplicate this. We're going to do a simple copy and paste. Everybody ready? Anybody ever copied and pasted before? Copy pasta? Okay, cool. Well, it's the same exact place and hotkeys as it is for everything, just about. We'll do the old school way, though, real quick. So let's go up to Edit, and then Copy, or if you know the hotkey, by all means. And then we want to go to Edit, Paste. And now we're done. We got 2 now, don't we?
Yes.
The trick question.
And the next layer.
Yep, that's right. We do have 2. It may not look like it yet, but it will in a second because I'm going to show you a new tool called the Move tool. Everybody ready? All right. Move tool is pretty easy to find because it's the very first tool. Looks like a cross with arrows. So let's click that tool. And then it's very easy to use. It's just a click and drag and let go. So check this out. You should be able to kind of do that. Oh yeah, the pink lines are alignment lines. It's kind of a newer thing, but they're pretty cool. They help it. It snaps. It can tell, where its previous child was. And you can kind of move it over there. Thomas is here. My best student. Everybody able to move them around okay? Looks good. Yep. Okay, now you're already starting to transform yours, interestingly enough. So that's the next part I'll talk about.
Well, I didn't touch anything.
Hit escape real quick for me.
That was there when,
Hit escape. What on earth? Okay, don't move. This is a minefield.
and it did that when I moved it out.
Okay. Well, some settings are different on yours, but we'll work with it. I mean, it's not, it isn't not working, so. Okay, sorry about that. False alarm. We will transform them here in a second, but first off, we'll just kind of move them around. I'm going to pull back. Let's do Command 0 again. And let's do this. Let's take a look at the layers themselves. So in the bottom right, you will have the layers window. And I'm going to minimize my color palette so we can see the layers a little bit better because I'm a little compressed up here. Everybody see that tab over there, the layers tab? It should be on the bottom right. It'll say layers. It'll look just like this.
How do you minimize your color tab?
Couple ways. If you just click the word color, it should reduce like that.
You can right click and then there's a minimize option.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple ways. And honestly, these are totally customizable. This is just what it gives you starting out.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick and choose. You can move them all around. So all these little rewind, fast forward buttons. And while we're on that note, if you go up to Window, this whole long list, these are all the ones that you could have out. But of course, if you had all these out, you wouldn't be able to see anything else. So you'll eventually know which ones you'll need and which ones you won't. Layers is one you'll always want to have out. So definitely keep that one out. So inside the layers window, a couple things I want to talk about. First off, the layers themselves are stacked right here. You can only be on one layer at a time. I mean, you can affect more than one layer at a time, kind of, but you're really only working on one layer at a time. And the one that you're on is the one that's highlighted in the lighter gray. And so in this case, we're on layer 1, and then when I use my move tool, I'm moving around my leaf. If I go to the background, I can't move it because it's locked. See the little lock there? Now that could be unlocked. But every time you open up a JPEG, it is a background layer that is locked. That's how it always starts. And then anytime you copy and paste something, anytime you paste something, it gets created in its own new layer. So what we did is we just took a portion out of the main background photo layer and we made a copy of just those pixels. And just those pixels are existing alone by themselves right now. They're just projected on top of what's behind it. So we'll take a look at that right now. You see how it's got a checkerboard here? You're going to see more checkerboard. You see these little eyes? Little eyeballs? Click those on and off for both. That doesn't delete the layer, it just renders it invisible. It hides and reveals the layers. Now those checkerboards, when you see the checkerboard, that means it is empty, transparent, nothing. Okay? You open up, if we do like a blank document here, show you guys. Letter. It's going to be white, but that's not emptiness. Those are just, it's full of white pixels. Right? So if I start erasing, yeah, see? So yeah, it'll be white because we use white paper, you know. It's like, it's really, there's nothing there. So that is what's different about a PNG. If you've ever tried to get transparency, you got to do a PNG because JPEG will fill any of that stuff with white pixels. I don't know why, but it does. So a good way to know what layer something is on is by hide and reveal the layer. That's a way I use a lot. Now you can move layers around. To do anything to the background layer, we would have to unlock it first. We're not gonna, but let's go ahead and take a look at how to make a copy of something. Say we want another leaf, okay? One way is you can right click on that layer, this being layer 1, which is our leaf copy. And then we could go down to duplicate layer and just hit OK. And then we can go back to the move tool and why, looky there. I've got yet another leaf. So is everybody able to drag that second leaf off top of the first? So we should have 3. But check it out. You use the move tool on that one only by being on that layer. And then if you wanted to move this leaf up here, I got to switch to that layer and then use the move tool. And see how they're also echoed in the thumbnail that you're looking at. I mean, if you look really close, I can see that that ginkgo is down here, whereas that ginkgo is right here. Any questions? Am I going too fast?
I can't get back to my leaves again. I did
Oh, click to the left of the picture where the eyeball used to be.
this one.
Yeah. And then do it for the other ones.
Oh, yeah. You got to turn them back on? You got something back.
Yeah, I did. And then I can just grab another one where I did the shoot.
Oh,
Okay.
This little baby needs to go home.
Hit Command 0. Better?
Something else open. A window.
A window open.
I think you hit Command O. Hit Escape. Now hit Command 0, not O. Okay. Any better?
Yeah, I have like the cross.
Okay. So when you move it, just take note of which ginkgo moves, right? Because you won't be able to move them both because you only move one layer at a time.
mine, I can move either leaf no matter what layer I'm on. It like is automatically changing
Yes.
the layer.
Check this out. You got to auto select on,
Oh.
which may or may not be a good thing. Sometimes I use it, but it can often be. Sorry about that. But yeah, someone had the auto select on. So with the auto select on, it's like whatever you click on, you move. It can be nice if what you're trying to move is easy to click on, but you know, if it's little pieces and stuff, it gets tougher to properly pull that off. So you able to move a couple of leaves around on the 2 different layers? Okay, I want you to check out one more thing. Doesn't matter which leaf you have, we're going to transform one of them, okay? So to do so, you can either go up to Edit, Free Transform, or you can hit Command T, which is what I do. Command T, and then you should get the bounding box around it. So you'll get the little white squares, and with those little white squares, that's how you can kind of push and pull and maneuver it around. So you can stretch it. And actually, this has totally changed. If any of you guys had done this in the old Photoshop, you used to have to hold Shift to keep the proportion. It's the opposite now. So if you scale it now, it stays proportional. You can rotate it by going out just outside the corner, and you will turn into a little curlicue. And I do want you guys to rotate it and definitely change the size. If you don't mind it warping or you want it to warp, hold Shift down, and then you can kind of stretch it circus mirror. So differences are between stretching and scaling. Fun, right? Any questions? Now here's the thing, once you've done those things, you gotta commit to it or you gotta abort. Yeah. So it's not gonna let you move on and do other stuff. Oh, I lied. They changed it. Usually you have to either say enter or hit escape. Like it'll stop you before you go on. But I guess now if you go on, you can break it, you buy it kind of thing. Okay, I lied. Things are changing, guys.
So when I hit escape, it took it back to the original.
Yes, escape is canceled. Always.
Okay.
Escape is hit the eject button. Yep.
So what was the thing to get the little squares off of it?
Command T will get to get them off of it.
Yeah, the blue square box is still on it.
Hit enter. Yours is like permanently on, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. It would take me a minute to find out. We'll probably just need to press through. And I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why that's happening.
It's okay.
I'd have to try to figure it out.
Go to the plug.
Well, yeah, at least it's functioning. But normally, once you do your thing and then you hit enter or you move on, the boxes go away. But there's probably some setting in there that's changed for you. If you are ever curious, I'm not going to devote time to this tonight, but if you are curious, you can always go up to Photoshop and then to Preferences up at the top left, and then, if you just click General, you'll see them all, and there's lots. See all this? Now I'm going to explain these to you one at a time. Okay. Be a lot of mansplaining to do, wouldn't it? All right, so let's look at layering from a different perspective here. I want you to move these two ginkgos that you have, one atop the other, kind of like I just did. I want 3 of them stacked. They don't have to be perfectly on top of one another, but overlapping in some amount, to some degree. Okay? Because we're going to stack them. So, you ever play a card game where there's like pick a card, put it back in the deck kind of thing? That's kind of how layers work. Another analogy that I love to use is that, do you remember in the old encyclopedias, way back in the day when encyclopedias were actually books, and they had the anatomy thing in them with like the human body, and you had like the clear plastic with the skeleton and the nervous system in one? That's kind of how layers work. Because as we looked at a minute ago, if I hide my background, these other 2 layers that are just ginkgo leaves, that's all they are. There's nothing here. Nothing. So a lot of Photoshop layers in many cases are like clear panes of glass with stuff on them. And in fact, believe it or not, back in the day, that's how they did composite images. They had to put it on a pane of glass and then another one and then a camera above it and take a picture of all of it as it was layered. Disney did that in Snow White. So that was the old way of doing it. It's a lot easier now, but they did do it that way. Like, if you guys ever seen that movie JFK with like Kevin Costner from like the early 90s, like there's a guy that does that to a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald, and like the shadows are going different, and it was like a faked photo or whatever. But it's a good movie. You guys should check it out. All right, so we're gonna rearrange these. So I've got my topmost leaf. If I want to put it underneath the middle leaf, the one that I stretched here, you can drag it, and then when you see that blue line, you can let it go. You guys see how I did that? Back up. All right. If something is over top of something, it doesn't mean it's destroyed anything. You just can't see it. It's hiding it. It's obscuring it. However, if I hit Save as a JPEG right now, I'm not going to have those 2 free-flying leaves anymore. It's going to be that. It's going to smash it down into one layer. JPEG are only one layer. In fact, most image file types are one layer. So inside Photoshop, you can play around with the layers. In some other programs, you can, but most of the time, that is not an option. So if you want to keep your layers, always save as a Photoshop document in addition to something else.
I only have 2 leaves because it won't let me move the 3rd one. A little box is just like.
But do you still have one?
I have 2. I have 1 leaf on top of another one here.
Okay.
So I have 1 layer. 2. I guess 1 layer.
How many do you have right here? 1, 2, or 3?
It shows 3.
Okay, you got 3 layers.
Layer 1, another layer 1, and then background.
You got 3.
But like on
You don't have them on top of one another?
On top of one another. No, they won't let me do it.
I bet
You
it
have to
will.
go to the move tool. Free transfer.
Try to click right in the middle and drag it.
I'll do that.
But you're moving that layer. But there is something up with yours. No. You gotta switch layers. Remember, you can only do 1 layer at a time.
So I'm gonna have to go ahead.
There you go.
Ah.
Yeah. It's okay. But yeah, 1 layer at a time.
Okay.
1 layer at a time, guys. So yeah, you've got it there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So stacking stuff, it's pretty cool. It's huge because you can get things by themselves. You don't have to worry about trimming the background off anymore once you've got it separated. This is how you only grab person A's face and then put it on person B, or like erase the X out of the picture, or whatever you're trying to do. So layers are what allow you to do that magic, to get composite images. So let's see. Let's look here. Composite. Awesome composite images. Automotive light painting is done that way. Let me see if I can find a good one. Yeah, these are all right. You see these around sometimes. Obviously, that's not like the real picture, Wait, what did I just say? There was another one that I was thinking of.
Automotive something.
Oh, yeah, automotive light painting. So, you guys have seen these pictures. Car people are way into this stuff. But, like, these kind of pictures that you see in magazines or TV or wherever, Instagram, that's not one shot. There's no way you could get a picture of a car to look like that in one picture. It's like dozens, sometimes over 100 separate pictures meshed together, and they're all stacked on top of one another, except they only show portions. And each photo is taken at a different camera setting, so it gets different lighting effects. It's actually pretty cool. I don't know how to do this myself. I've never done it, but it's quite fascinating. Because, the way normally it would not, I'm trying to look at it like a regular and I can't seem to find one. But it's cool. It's not it's similar to like the sparklers, like drawing with your sparklers. It's kind of cool.
So the regular looks flat.
Yeah, it wouldn't look the same at all. You wouldn't get the same kind of light. And then, let's see, HDR. Let me see if I can find. HDR is high dynamic range. So it's taking multiple exposures and then combining them into one. Like this. This is basically automotive light painting. This is the same thing, just in the dark. Okay? So we're using this one for our sky, because obviously if you had to pick one, that's the cool one, right? But look at how the buildings look here, because this was underexposed. This was overexposed to get the buildings, but it completely destroyed my sky. It washed me out. This is where you've combined them all. And so there's settings in cameras now where you can click the shutter once. As long as you got a tripod or you hold it still, it'll do, and then you've got those 4. You combine them later. Now, Photoshop can actually automatically do this for you, but it still takes some work and know-how, which I'm not super familiar with, but it is pretty cool. So that's a very popular way of using composite images that isn't necessarily a, chopping off somebody's head and putting it on another body. It's done a lot. And I challenge you, go out and as you're looking at pictures, especially like pictures in magazines and stuff like that, if the colors look really too good to be true, they probably are. HDR photos look like that or that. We see them all the time. We just don't think about it. But they have like their light is very extraordinary, I guess you could say. So those are things that you could do with these ginkgos. You could do them with anything inside Photoshop. So those aren't all the ways, but there's some of the ways that allow you to grab parts of an image and then put them on something else. Now, there are also other things that layers do. The other big one that I want to briefly talk about is opacity and blending modes. So we'll talk about them for a minute. I want you to take the leaf that you have on, whatever your topmost layer is. Just go all the way up to the tip top layer 1. And hide and reveal it. And make sure you're on that one. Now, where you see opacity here, does everybody see that? Opacity and transparency are interchangeable. So, okay. Now, change that. So if you click that little arrow to the right of it, you get a slider. Start reducing that down. Man, that leaf totally ghosted me, man. See that? You do kind of get a ghost image. They would call that what in the old photo days? Superimposed? Double exposure? Yeah, exactly. Except, typically, normally, it's 100%. So pixel at 100% is on top of another pixel, completely, nullifies it. You can't see it anymore. But you have all the in-betweens. So, crazy, right? Actually, don't worry about how I'm doing this. We'll talk about all this in subsequent classes, but if I would change it a little bit, okay? And then check out the effect you'll get here. See, it's blending with the two colors. So the gray is mixing with my green. The yellow is mixing with my green. Look at the difference. It's huge, right?
That's kind of what I was talking. What she did with the picture she brought in that time was like when you had the middle blue. So that explains how she did that.
Tell me who she is.
Marsha,
I'm sure I know, but I bet I know her.
I'll have to find out. Yeah, all I know is Marsha.
I bet I know her. If she's taking classes here, I'm sure I know her. Yeah.
But she's told me.
Wait, no. She doesn't have black hair, does she?
No, she has grayish colored hair, long, pulls it back on like a ponytail. She's about my size.
I'd have to say I'm sure I taught her.
So.
Well.
All I know is Marsha.
Okay. When you see her again,
I'll
try to find, because you're going to be taking a bunch of classes from me anyway, right? So we'll meet again, I'm sure. You said you were signed up for a bunch, right? I mean, we'll let you back.
I feel like I'm.
You're doing fine. So the other thing is blending modes, and that's similar to. It's kind of like what I did with turning that green, not exactly, but blending modes. Okay. Oh, goodness. Mine is all funky because it's at a different resolution to fit on our 8-year-old projector here. Sorry about that. You guys have much more room. So right next to opacity here, this is probably another thing that Marsha was doing as well. See where it says normal? I mean, do you guys really like normal? It's so boring, right? So try some of these other ones on for size. Some of them won't look like they're doing anything. They all do something. It just kind of depends on what you've got over top of what. But what this does is, instead of it just being regular old pixel on top of pixel, just being a pixel, whatever the top pixel is, that's what you're going to see. This changes their interaction. It affects the relationship of the pixel above the other one. It applies math to it, essentially. I've actually seen the equations. They're pretty weird. Some of them, like, for example, luminosity basically makes it gray, takes the color out. Color takes everything out but the color. Darken, multiply and screen Those are good ones. Multiply only lets the darks show through. It makes the lights transparent and vice versa with screen. Oh man, my neck really sore today. Yeah. I don't expect you guys to, well, honestly, I don't expect myself to know this stuff because I don't. I know a couple of them. And a couple of them I use a lot, and a couple of them I never use.
And you can do this on black and white pictures too, because that's what she had.
Any layer in Photoshop, you can do it. Now, with black and white, you won't get all the same options because they don't have color, and a lot of those involve color. But not all of them.
Yeah.
Color is overrated. It's a luxury we have as humans. Plenty of animals, I'd wager to say most, don't see color, don't need to see color. They can see at night. We can't. There's no color at night. So why do you need to see color anyway when you want to evolve to see better at night? Everything's black and white at night anyway. So it's a trade-off. But they say, you know, primates and stuff eat fruit. You got to be able to not eat the poison fruit and stuff, and color can be... That's why the birds see color, perhaps. We don't know for sure. But you don't need to see color to be able to get around, is what I'm getting at. What's important is value, which is light to dark. That's how we see the world. Color does not help us see depth at all. It's all light versus dark. And I mean, you can have a masterpiece in black and white, right? A lot of people are worried about color, you know. A lot of people are really worried about color in the beginning. I mean, color, it's nice. It's nice, but you know. There's a big difference between being colorblind and being blind. There you go. So, all pixels have an identity. They are mapped and calculated by the computer. So if you go up to Window for me, I'm going to show you something else. Let's see. Let me back up here. And I want you to go down to histogram. Anybody in here ever used a histogram before? Well, you will in a second. Click histogram for me, and that's going to pop open the histogram window. You ever seen one of these? They're pretty cool. So there's different ways to see these histograms. So what this is doing is it's mapping out every little pixel inside your image. And it's graphing it according to brightness and darkness and the difference between the two and color. So let's take a look here first. I want you to click in the top right corner of the histogram these little parallel lines. And then take me down to all channels view. And then instead of colors, go to luminosity where it says channel. Actually, we don't need all channels view. I'm going to go back to compact view. It was luminosity is really what I wanted to see. Or rather, go to expanded view. Yes, that's the one I want. Expanded view, please. So this is cool. It's telling me how many pixels this was. So this photo is, are you ready? 374,544 pixels. See, I wasn't kidding when I said millions. I wasn't kidding. It's billions. If you're talking about a video, trillions. That's why those video files are so big. It has to keep track of all those pixels. There's like no other way to do it. A video is just thousands and thousands of JPEGs, and it has to keep track of where all those little dots are. And when it messes up, or somebody scratches the disk, what does it look like? Bunch of squares. Sometimes it looks like a bunch of squares, right? You guys have seen that where it like fragments and so pixel errors, right? Okay, so the histogram is basically graphing all the pixels in here from light to dark. So dark on the left, light on the right. So this huge spike right here is all the dark gray. These smaller little peaks are these extreme darks right here, like just these really dark areas, the shadow here. And then all this right here is our leaves. And then this little bump right here, those are the slightly brighter water droplet parts. Watch what happens as I change. Hide some of your layers and notice how, ooh, less yellow leaves. Check out what happens to that mountain on the right. I may be kind of a weird nerd. I am. But I find this kind of fun. I don't know why, but I do. Another thing you can do with that is let's go ahead and look at adjustments. I think you guys are ready. So keep the histogram out. Over here on the right, I don't think I changed mine, so yours should be roughly in the same spot. Adjustments. And then it should be a menu of these little icons you should find. I hope. And then the first one we're going to look at here is levels. And it actually looks like a little histogram. It's the second one. All you got to do is click that one time. And so this has done something quite interesting here. It has created a new layer. It's called an adjustment layer. And all that layer does is tell the layers under it what to change. So we're going to make some changes here. And you see this histogram that is represented here in the properties window. It should have just appeared, just popped up when you made your adjustments window go away. Okay? And inside there, you've got these three little carrots, I call them, these three little sliders. So the middle one is the first one we're going to look at, and that is going to shift where the median pixel is. Okay, so drag that to the left, drag that to the right. Watch what it does to your histogram. So you're averaging, or you're pushing all the pixels darker or lighter, no matter what. Even the brightest of the bright pixels, you're brightening them. You're brightening even the darkest of the dark when you slide this. Okay? Middle. And then you can tell when you're at 0 when it's at 1. You're at a neutral 0 there. Okay? Now, if you drag the one on the right or on the left, you're moving your brightest bright. So you're changing the relationship of all the other pixels compared to the brightest pixel. So you guys know the old, I don't have to outrun the bear, I only have to outrun you. Well, this is how fast you are running, which determines how fast I'm running, right? Because I got to run faster than you. And the bear, well, you know what I mean. And look what it does to your histogram. Ouch, this isn't good. When you see this, that's a bit nuclear. These peaks here are this crazy whited out. And then if you move the left one.
Well, how did you get those little dots under there, the 3 dots?
You don't have those?
No.
Okay. Did you click in your adjustments window, did you click this thing?
I clicked the crown, yeah.
You click that.
Mm-hmm.
Crown? Well, I guess it kind of looks like crown. Okay. You should have those sliders then. If not, properties is the tab you want to have open. It should be right next to adjustments. Properties.
Yeah, you're property. Move to the right a second.
I'll get you there. Yeah, you're looking right at it. It's just, oh, I see what's going on. Okay. I'll just help you. Sorry about that.
Oh.
I know, it's like a cruel joke.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
You may not be seeing me anymore.
No, you're fine. This is, I don't know, of all seats, that was not a good one tonight for some reason. And then contrast is down here. How bright is your brightest bright? How dark is your darkest dark? Well, I don't want it to be quite so extreme. Okay, well, it's not. And it looks boring for it, right? I just want everything to be normal. Because if you had no contrast, everything's gray. Now, this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying value is everything. Without differences in value, I mean, well, it's a couple of gray blobs, you know? Like, color didn't save me. If it's all the same color, it doesn't help. So, that's a little bit about how the pixels can be manipulated in Photoshop just via math type stuff. So, something that happened there, when we were looking at the histogram and the levels adjustment, notice that the window down here, in the layers window, the layer that we have called the levels layer, see this big white box? That means it's affecting the whole picture. So when we change stuff on this slider, it's affecting every pixel equally. But what do you think would happen if I decided that I wanted to come in here and just grab that leaf, and then I went back to adjustments, and then I went to, say, the levels slider, and I started changing stuff? Notice that it's only affecting that leaf because I selected that leaf, and then when I went in and made a layers adjustment by clicking that layer icon, it masked it. And that's what this little square that's linked to it means. White means on, black means off. So it's just like masking tape or a stencil. So it's a lot like the marching ants, except you don't see the marching ants, more or less. That's getting a little advanced, but just to give you the idea, or just to kind of show you the idea that whatever you select, you can start affecting just that part. Okay. Questions? You guys are awfully quiet.
I closed my. I lost my display of my different layers.
Did you minimize the layers window? Maybe?
Yeah, or I think I edited it.
Okay, that's okay. If you do, just go up to Window and then go back and click Layers. You can always get a window back. You can always get rid of the window, the X in the top left corner. And you can always move them around. Like, we don't need paths or channels. So if you wanted to get rid of those, this is how you would do it. You would click and drag. Don't need that. Paths. Don't need that. So, history's nice, but history's interesting. Photoshop saves and keeps track of every single step you take inside it. You can go forward and backward. But once you go backward and then you go in a new direction forward, you can never go forward in the old direction again. Make sense? It's like the butterfly effect, kind of. And to go back, one step is Command Z. And to go back more than one step is Command Option Z, and you can keep doing it. Or sorry, Command Shift Z, is that right? I don't know. Command Z will take you back one. Edit, undo. Edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo. Oh, I guess it's just Command Z now. They fixed that. Nice. If you guys just keep hitting Command Z, will it keep going back and back? Oh, good. So they are finally getting the message. That's good. Okay. Any questions on that? There's an art to that. There's several different tools that you can use, but interesting that you mentioned that. That's sort of what I always call like a bad cut and paste job. I'm just going to try to bring it up here so we can all see it. Yeah, it sometimes like really sticks out. And again, it's all about those edges. Here we go. That's a bad one, right? So the main ones, I'll have to teach you some new tools here, but let me try to find one that's, I don't know, mine doesn't look too bad. I'll open something to simulate here because I gotta actually have. Maybe the bull. Okay, so this poor guy. Hope he's still at Shakertown. Hasn't been turned into a cheeseburger yet. Okay.
What are you doing to do that?
I just used that quick selection brush, but she was asking about, like, what do you do with the outline to make it blend better? And you guys can see on mine here that I have this outline around it. And it's not even so much the grass that I'm talking about, but it's like, do you see this harsh edge and there's like this white halo? So how do you get rid of that? Well, the simple way, there is a way to have it select your perimeter and then kind of retract it a little bit, kind of shift the edge. That's kind of the more complex way to do it. The easy way to do it, the manual way to do it, I guess, would be to use the eraser tool, which is this guy right here. Well, I don't even know how many down that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 down. Now, again, like the quick selection brush, this is a brush tool. So size matters. And another thing matters with this tool, hardness. Again, all about the edges. Why do these edges look fake? Because they're too hard, they're too stark, they're too drastic. Because when we actually see things with our eyes, we take all this for granted and don't even think about it. But every 3D object you see has like a roll-off. It's three-dimensional, so, you know, this part of my head doesn't look the same as this part, doesn't look the same as this part. It kind of blurs, it's curved. Just like looking at the Earth, unless you're like flat Earth people. If you are, I'm sorry. But that's why it looks funky like that. So with the eraser tool, it's very important that you get a soft edge. So what you do for that is you right click. So any of the brush based tools, and there's a lot of them, the eraser being one, you can right click and then you have a size slider. So you can adjust that way if you want, or you can still use the brackets. And hardness. Now I'll show you what a hard brush looks like. And here's what a soft brush looks like. Which one do you think is going to be good for softening up the edges? Pretty obvious, right? Yep. So with a soft brush, honestly probably bigger than you're thinking, but not always. You kind of come in there. Now see, that's a little too soft.
So I'm sorry, how did you get the soft, how do you know the difference between a soft and hard brush?
If you right click, there's there's a percentage amount.
Okay.
Honestly, most of the time, I personally work in 0 to 100, 0 or 100 more than half the time. But sometimes you'll have it kind of in the middle. And honestly, this might be a good time for that. Yeah, because see, okay, let me go back here. See these marks? This isn't good because it's actually getting some of the cow. And I don't want to lose some of the cow. Do you see those 3 that I did? Mm-hmm. So it was a little too soft. But if I go in here, that's about 50%. Then I can kind of go around and do that. If you absolutely do not want to erase any of it, another tool option is the blur tool. And I always recommend to blur any cut and paste edges a bit, just a bit. I remember many years ago, there was Daryl Isaacs and his dad on the back of the phone book, nonetheless. And somebody had done just like a laughably bad job of cutting and pasting on the phone book. I mean, like, that was thousands of dollars they paid for that. That's what flipped me out the most. On the phone book. Probably like, well, never mind. But the oh wait, I'm selling the eraser.
So to make that circle big and small, you still use the bracket thing to make it
yes.
bigger and smaller? Okay.
And the blur tool is right here. It looks like a little water droplet. It's only too down, but it's the same type of mechanism. It's a brush, and look at that. That helps too.
Just keep going over it.
Yeah, until you don't want to get it too blurry. It's on 50% strength by default, which might be a little high. I typically turn it down because you can go over it multiple passes and it'll keep getting blurrier. I like to do a little bit till I'm where I'm at rather than just having to go back because it was too much. It's like a lot of things in life. You just, a dab will do you kind of, you know what I mean. But you don't want to get, that's too much right there. That's starting to look weird again. But blurring it a little bit can help. And the nice thing about blurring is it's not erasing any pixels. What it's doing is it's making the pixels more alike. And if there's any like randomness in the pixels, it's going to even them out. I can zoom in real close and show you. See that? Look what it does.
Oh, okay.
It's like smearing them basically,
Mm-hmm.
Looks different up close than it does far away, doesn't it?
Oh, lighten it out. Huh?
Yeah, and low resolution images tend to look okay when you're far away from them. It's when you get close they start to look weird. That's a good question though. Any other questions?
Are we doing any text today?
Yes.
Okay.
That will be my next lesson. And if you guys have any other questions, then we'll do those. Otherwise, I think we'll be finished. I'll talk a little bit more about saving and stuff. And none of the stuff I've talked about tonight really hardly touches photo editing. But you can do all that inside Photoshop also. It's probably not the fastest or easiest program for doing that anymore these days, honestly. Lightroom is probably better for just photography. But you can't do any of this layer stuff or cutting and pasting in Lightroom hardly at all. That's all still Photoshop. Or text for that matter. Lightroom. Lightroom. Okay guys, last but not least, the text tool. They call it the horizontal type tool, but vast majority of the time you're going to be typing horizontally anyway. So it is a T. A big capital T on the toolbar. Now there's two things that you can do with this tool. You can create a text box or you can just click and start your cursor. I prefer to start a text box. So when I click, I'm going to hold down and drag and then let go. So if you want to watch me here, it looks a lot just like the marquee tool, except it's going to fill with lorem ipsum. It's a mysterious ancient language from like the 30s when early computers were being started.
How did you get to the capital?
It's on the toolbar. It's towards the bottom.
Oh, left hand side. Oh, okay.
Actually, I guess it really is Latin, isn't it? It just doesn't mean anything. Or is it a real language? I can't even remember. But it's placeholder text, which they didn't used to do, but now they do. So it should fill with placeholder text. I'm going to move it down here. So what you can do is just hit delete or backspace and then type in what you want to say. Express yourselves. Everybody typing? Everybody good? So now we're going to have a spelling bee. Library edition. So text in Photoshop is a layer all its own. Pretty cool. If you look over in your layers window, you will see a text layer. And it's clearly identified as a text layer because it's got that big T. You know why? Because the text is not, it's not really pixels yet. It's temporarily pixels, but we can change a lot of things about this text. We can change the size, color, all that kind of stuff, and we can freely come and go as we want with the text. Something I can't stress enough, if you're doing a project that involves text, please, for the love of God, save it as a .psd file in addition to whatever else you're saving it as, because I can't tell you how many times people want to come in and like, hey man, I need to change this date on this poster, but I want to use the rest of the poster, but I just need to change this date. And they haven't done that. So you go from like 30-second fix to, you know, a good 15 minutes if I'm helping them, you know. So it could be a pretty big difference, because if it's not still a text layer, you can't go in and change the wording. You're literally like whiteout at that point, you know. So it can be quite a big difference. So if I go, say, to another layer, go to my move tool here, I'm bring that back. I'm moving around my ginkgo and all that. I can go back to my text layer. I can move my text layer around with my move tool. But if I want to go back and type stuff or change stuff, I go back to the type tool. And then what I want you to do with the type tool is, this can be tricky, because if you don't click in just the right spot, you're going to end up just creating a ton of blank text boxes. Notice my cursor now versus now. Now and there. So if I click when I don't have that square around it, now I'm back in the game. And now I can click and drag to highlight. And I don't know, I don't like this alfresco font at all. So I'm going to change it to something else.
My text is underlined. How do I get rid of that?
Is it misspelled words? I guess those don't underline. So your text is underlined.
It's underlined in the color that it was originally too.
Oh, is it like this? It's not highlighted.
No,
It's got an
highlighted.
underscore?
It's literally like a, underscore.
Oh, okay. The way you do that, it's not actually out in the quick menu, but if you go right here to this guy, it will bring out the character menu, and then you got underline right there.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
So I'm not sure why, but you will have to have whatever you want to underline or un-underline highlighted. There we go. Is that kind of what you had?
Okay, yes, that helped. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then also, it's good that you brought that up, because the character, these are just like the utter basics. So you've got font, style, size, I don't even know what that is, just the simple 3 orientations, color, and that's about it. If you want more though, there is character and paragraph, which give you a ton more options, indentation, etc., etc. Photoshop can handle most of the options that you would have with text, but it's not the best program for it. It isn't the best program to make text art. Illustrator is. Although Photoshop's pretty good. You can do it in both, and they complement one another. But if you have a ton of text, InDesign, 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 InDesign. Don't do it in Photoshop. If you've got, if it's a poster, sure. You know, if it's a flyer, it's got a couple lines of text, you know, something that looks like this, roughly, yeah. But if we're talking like multiple...
logo or anything?
Logo would be Illustrator for sure. But if it's like a newsletter or a calendar or a magazine, anything multi-page with a ton of text, definitely InDesign is so much better for that, because it gives you so many more options for lots of text. I don't even think Photoshop has a spell check. But then again, it's not really designed to handle a lot of text. To throw a caption in or a title. You could totally use it to make a flyer,
Right.
but InDesign was designed ground up for desktop publishing, graphic design stuff.
Okay.
Whereas Photoshop was designed as like pixels and photos and editing imagery type of stuff. But yeah, you got bold and italic and all that stuff inside character. Plus you can stretch them, you can affect the spaces between the letters, all kinds of fun stuff like that to play around with at home on your very own TV set at home. Follow along with the home edition. Let's see. And, oh yeah, let me show you one more thing that's really cool though. And this is something that the other programs I mentioned do, but Photoshop does really well. If you want to give it some special effects, and I know all of you do, what you'll do is you can actually do this to any layer, but text is a good way to show it off. If you go down to your text layer in the layers window, and all I want you to do is double click, and you'll get a menu like this. It's kind of hard to see mine here, but you can. Okay, layer styles. This brings up your special effects. So first one I'll put on here, let's say we want a nice little drop shadow. Mine's kind of small. I see, opacity was, now it's at 100. And each of these little effects has a menu. If you click on the effect, see how it's highlighting? So satin. Satin puts a color on there, kind of like a gloss. That didn't look good. But if I switch my color to white, has anyone ever messed with these kinds of things in any kind of program before? Drop shadow is a common one, and stroke. Stroke is a big one. So turn on stroke over here. It may not show up much on my screen, but if I go here to stroke, let's say red, and then size, crank that up, you'll see there would be like an outline. Oh, I want it outside. There we go. See that? Cool stuff. They're not really pixels that exist. They're just tied to your text. Now, you can rasterize your text, but when you do that, you can't go back in and hit backspace and spacebar and stuff anymore. It's just like what you see is what you have, and you'd have to go use the eraser on it. But when the layer looks like this with a T on it, it's a text layer. So you can't use the eraser on that layer while it's a text layer. You would have to rasterize it first. And rasterize it means that you turn it into the pixels you're looking at, and then it's pixels from there on out. It's a one-way trip. I know it. Well, don't worry about it. Just don't rasterize your type. You'll be okay. Whatever you do, here's the second most important thing that I'll say all night. And that is, when you save something, you go to File, Save As, and always do at least a version like this with that layers option checked, and it will be automatically checked, but you've got to have that on, or you're in a world of hurt. Believe me. If you've got a lot of layers and stuff, and you've got text, I mean, this is absolutely certain. I mean, if you're just opening up a JPEG, fixing one thing, you'll never need to come back to it again. Maybe not, but to be on the safe side, save it as a Photoshop document. Then you can go back and save another one as a JPEG. Look at this list. These are all these options you have, and there's even more beyond that. But keep your layers if you can. Otherwise, if you need to change something, you're going way back to the start. Okay? It does not do an autosave, but Command S is save. Gradient tool is actually really cool. Let's see. So, say we wanted like a box here. I'm going to give it its own layer. That's important. And the new layer button that I just clicked is this one right here next to the garbage can. And new layers always go right above. Always above. If you copy and paste, you just paste it above where you just were. So go to the gradient tool. That's a boring one. Let's get something a little more flashy. There we go. And then you click and drag your gradient, and it goes in there just like that. But if you see how where you drag it affects it. Now, I can be outside of it and still get it. That's what the ants are helping me do. If the ants weren't there, Rainbow Land, oh boy. So let's see. And then if you really want to play with your gradient, are you on the gradient tool right now?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, if you go to the gradient tool and you pick your gradient here, there's this, this is where you pick what gradient you're going to use. But if you open that up, and I think if you double click on any of these, no, I lied. Or if you go to there's a way you can edit the gradient. I'm trying to remember how you do that. How do you get that up? Maybe
you
it's...
click on the layer since it's an edit layer?
No, it's up here somewhere. Because you can... Oh, I got it up there. I don't know how... Oh, sorry. Okay, yep. Instead of clicking the down arrow, you click right on the gradient.
Oh,
And then it pops up this gradient editor. And you can save your gradient. It's something called a preset.
yeah.
So inside Photoshop, there's countless, you can get all kinds of stuff for free, or some you can pay for if you want online. Things such as fonts, swatches, Pantones, gradients, brushes, you name it, thousands and thousands of things. But you can manipulate the gradient, you can add new colors. And this is the same, it's 98% the same as this in Illustrator, which is nice.
Okay.
So if you learn one of these, you've learned them both. But say I just want those 3 colors in my gradient, so now I've just made a 3. So.
Right.
And then there's another type of gradient, which is a little more complex, but very useful, especially in graphic design. And it's this, probably don't have time to go in too much detail about it, but it goes from a solid to a transparent. This is a handy one. You'll see a lot of this in design, like a transition gradient.
Yeah.
And all that is it's all in white, but it goes from 100% to 0% transparency.
Right.
So it just fades. Vignettes do that. You do like a vignette, and you have the radial gradient option too. So that is a vignette. It's just it's the opposite of it. If I went that away, no, I lied. I need to switch this. Is there not a flip it around version? There's got to be. Reverse. There we go. Now it's all like a. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Ooh. It's hard for me to really... Still kind of powerful over on that side. Yeah, I don't know. But it is possible to make it like a halo around it, like they used to do in old-timey photos. It's like a French word. It's a tunnel vision too. There's natural vignettes that come from the camera lens, but in old-timey photography, you see it a lot. Or as methods of cropping. Or not. I thought I would find some that had it. I guess I lied. Whoa, that's cool.